I want you to try something for me right now. Wherever you are, on the train, in your kitchen, walking the dog, reach for something near you. A cup of coffee, maybe your phone.
But don't actually touch it.
Exactly. Just stop your hand about an inch away and just hover there. Hold it.
Feel that.
Yep.
That little bit of tension, that anticipation.
It feels like... Well, it feels like nothing, right? It's just empty air waiting to be filled. But according to the sources we're getting into today, that tiny distance, that specific inch of air, is maybe the most important place in the universe. It's called the interval.
And the argument we're looking at is a pretty bold one. It suggests that the cup, or whatever you're reaching for, exists more fully in that split second before you grab it.
More fully than when you're actually holding it?
Yeah, because once you hold it, you possess it. It's yours. But in the interval, you're attending to it.
Attending. That is the word for today. We are doing a deep dive into two very distinct, and I'd say pretty mysterious narratives. We've got The Interval Where the Hand Was by Penix and Thirst Theory by Ebenix Ornon.
And these are they're fascinating texts. They're not novels, not really.
Right.
They're more like case studies on the art of paying attention. But not, the kind of attention you pay to a spreadsheet at work.
No, this is something else entirely. It's a radical, almost dangerous level of attention. And we're going to follow two central figures today who really take this idea to its extreme. First, there's Ines.
Right.
She's an archivist who gets completely obsessed with a 170-year-old note about, of all things, water pressure.
A note that really shouldn't even exist.
And then there's Marta. And Marta's story is, it's a little harder to stomach. She lives in a building that's literally crumbling around her, and every morning she drinks salt water.
On purpose.
On purpose, to make herself thirstier. But the wild thing is, these two women who have never met, live in totally different worlds, are supposedly part of the same secret lineage. The sources call it the chain.
And that's really our mission today. We have to figure out what this chain actually is. It's described as a group of people across centuries who practice watching without looking away.
And the best part, by the end of this, you might just find you're already part of it. So let's start with Ines. She works in a municipal archive. What's her deal?
So Ines is described as being pre-social, which I think is a great word for it. She deals with all the stuff a city leaves behind: birth certificates, death records, noise complaints.
The paper trail of life.
Exactly. And her job is to create finding aids.
Finding aids.
Basically inventories.
Yeah.
A map to tell future researchers where everything is. And the text makes a really crucial point. She's great at her job because she doesn't care.
Right, because you can't. If you stopped to read every noise complaint from 1972, you'd never get anything done. She's detached.
She's efficient. It's just box 4, row C. until she finds the document that breaks the whole system for her.
The Catalyst, a single unfiled page from 1847.
Yep, 1847.
So what's on this page that just stops a career archivist in her tracks?
It's a note from some anonymous city administrator. He's writing about the water supply, specifically a public fountain. And he makes this very, very strange observation. He says the water flowing from the fountain has become heavier.
Okay, wait. Heavier?
Yes.
Water is water, H2O. I mean, unless we're talking about a nuclear reactor, it weighs what it weighs. Is this, like, a metaphor?
Well, that's the whole conflict. He thinks it's physical. He claims that over 8 years, mineral accretion, calcium, lime, has built up inside the pipes.
So, like, lime scale.
Exactly. And he argues the water is picking up this residue, this history of the pipe, and it's physically falling shorter. It's not reaching as far as it used to.
Okay, so it's a plumbing problem. Clogged pipes. Why is that so profound?
Because of what happens next. He asks the city engineer, a guy named Heinrich Voss, to measure it. And Voss comes down with his instruments, runs his tests, and says, no change. The volume is the same. The velocity is the same.
So the data says everything is fine. Science wins.
That's what should happen. But the administrator, he refuses to accept it. He basically says, I don't care what your instruments say. I can see it. He trusts his own eyes over the machine because he's been watching it every day for 8 years.
So it's this tension between measurement, the hard data, and attending the human witness.
That's it, exactly. And because he can't prove it, he can't get it fixed. So he ends the note with a sentence that completely changes Ines' life. He writes, I will note this and move on.
I will note this and move on.
It sounds so bureaucratic, doesn't it? Just another piece of paperwork.
It does, but there's something else there. A kind of resignation.
Or maybe an act of rebellion. He didn't fix it. He didn't find the data to satisfy the engineer. He witnessed it. He allowed the reality of the heavy water to exist, without needing to solve it. And Ines reads this 170 years later and has this epiphany. That's what I've been doing.
And this connects to her life outside the archive, right? She has some pretty weird habits at home.
She does. I mean, to really get into this, you have to look at her morning routine. Every single morning, she sits and faces a crack in her wall.
A crack.
A diagonal one, about 1.3 meters long. And she doesn't call a contractor. She doesn't get spackle. She just attends to it. The text says she is remaining intimate with the fact of its splitting.
You know, that sounds a little like meditation, but also kind of like an excuse. I'm not ignoring my home repairs. I'm attending to them.
It's different, though. Meditation is often about going inward, clearing your mind. Attending is entirely about the object. It's about giving the crack or the coffee cup total authority.
The coffee. That really stood out to me. She pours a cup of coffee and just lets it go cold on purpose.
Right. She watches the steam fade. She calls it a truce between the liquid and the room. She's just observing the transfer of heat. The room accepts it. The coffee gives it up. It's a quiet transaction, and she's just the witness.
But when she finds that 1847 note, something shifts for her at work. The files aren't just paper anymore.
She starts calling them companions. She realizes the archive isn't a collection of facts. It's a collection of gaps. And that's when she starts creating what the text calls the shadow archive.
I love this concept, but walk me through it. She's still doing her regular job, right? She's not just ignoring everything.
Oh, yeah, she's still filing, but she's also subverting the system. She starts making these private finding aids for things that aren't actually there.
Give me an example.
Okay, so street repair records. She finds a folder of letters between two city officials arguing about paving a certain road. But there's a 6-month gap in the correspondence. No letters at all.
And a normal archivist would just assume a file is missing or just catalog what they have.
Exactly. But Ines catalogs the missing 6 months. She writes a note in her shadow archive calling it a silence that was chosen. She infers there was a huge argument, a point where they stopped writing and started shouting. She archives the unrecorded anger.
That's beautiful, but isn't she just making that up? It's fiction.
She would argue she's attending to the negative space. Just like the administrator watched the water not reach the edge. Here's another one. She finds a birth certificate where the original name was scribbled out in heavy ink and Maria was written on top.
Okay.
A normal finding aid would just say Maria. But Ines creates an entry for the crossed out name. Her note says that Maria is not just a name. She is who remained. She's archiving the act of erasure itself.
And all this strange behavior eventually attracts someone else. This researcher, Eli.
Yes, Eli enters the picture. He's researching the history of measurement standards, and he's actually looking for information on Heinrich Voss.
The engineer, the guy who couldn't measure the heavy water. So they're coming at the same story from opposite directions.
Exactly. But Eli finds another breadcrumb from our anonymous administrator. It's a census of goats from 1847.
A census of goats? Why were they counting goats?
There was some kind of agricultural survey, who knows? But in the margins, the administrator, the very same guy, wrote a little note, a theory that an event is a bruise on time.
A bruise on time. Wow. That's a heavy thought for a goat census.
It is. But think about what a bruise is, right? It's old blood under the surface. The impact is over, but the discoloration remains. He's saying that when something big happens, a war, a heartbreak, maybe even just water falling for 8 years, it leaves a mark. It discolors reality itself.
Lieutenant Ines and Eli,
Yeah.
and what, they fall in love over this?
No, not at all. It's not a romance. They don't go on dates. They just sit in her apartment in silence with the page about the heavy water sitting on the table between them.
They're just attending together.
And that is our first real glimpse of the chain. The source compares it to a choir holding a single long note. One singer runs out of breath, another one picks it up. The note continues. The singers don't need to know each other. They just need to hold the note.
And Ines and Eli realize they're holding the same note as some guy from 1847.
Precisely.
Okay, let's hold that image. The choir, the note.
Because we have to pivot to our second text, thirst theory. And this is a whole different vibe. Ines is all dust and paper and quiet rooms. Marta is intense. Marta is visceral. If Ines represents the mind, Marta's all about the body.
So she lives in a condemned building that's actively crumbling. Why doesn't she just leave?
Because the crumbling is the point for her. She is attending to the destruction. The text says her reality is made up of 3 weathers.
Right, I wanted to ask about this. It says she lives in 3 climates at once. Tropical, monastic, and Greek ruin. What does that even mean? Is she hallucinating?
No, it's about layers of perception. Think of it this way. The tropical weather, that's her body. It's summer. In the city, she's always sweating, hot, humid. That's the biological layer.
Okay, physical reality, got it.
Then there's the monastic. That's her mind. She's stripping her life down to nothing. No furniture, barely eating. Her mind is cold, hard, empty, like a monk's cell.
So she's hot on the outside, cold on the inside. What about the Greek ruin? It's a modern apartment building.
That's her memory. Her mind is imposing a structure on the chaos. She sees rebar sticking out of the concrete, and her brain maps it as broken columns. She sees dust and calls it ancient history. She's not living in a dump, she's living in a temple. The ruin of her own life has become a sacred site.
That is intense. And to manage this, she has the saltwater ritual.
Every single morning,
Talk us through this, because honestly, it sounds physically dangerous.
she mixes 1 part salt to 7 parts water. It's not enough to be lethal, but it's enough to be completely disgusting. She drinks it. And the text describes how her throat contracts, her stomach clenches, her cells are screaming for fresh water, and she's giving them poison.
Well, why? Why would anyone do that to themselves?
The goal isn't to satisfy thirst. The goal is to sharpen it. The text literally says the goal is to want without having.
So she's hacking her own biology just to feel pure, unsatisfied longing.
Exactly. Think back to that hovering hand we did at the start. That space between your hand and the cup. Marta is trying to live in that space inside her own body. She wants the feeling of reaching for water forever without ever getting the relief.
And she connects this to the idea of a faceless goddess.
Yes, she studies this obscure mythology of a goddess of thirst. And the statues of this goddess have no faces. It's just a smooth oval of stone where the eyes and mouth should be.
Is that because she's, like, anonymous?
Because a face would define the wanting. It would make it an object. I want this person. I want that job. Marta is after the pure verb, just to want. And the text says the statues are smooth because for centuries, worshippers have just touched that empty space, wearing the stone down. They're touching the gap.
Wow, so Ines attends to the gap in the archive.
And Marta attends to the gap in her body.
They're doing the exact same thing, just in totally different mediums. They're holding the interval open.
That's it.
And just like Ines found Eli, Marta isn't totally alone either, right? The chain finds her.
Yeah, and it happens in such a fascinating way. Marta eventually has to leave her apartment. It's about to be demolished. She leaves behind a single glass with some salt residue on the rim.
And a demolition worker finds it.
A man only called D. He's there to tear the place down. He sees the glass, and he doesn't just toss it. He sees the specific pattern of the salt crystals dried on the glass, and he understands.
But how could he possibly understand what that means?
The text implies he is also of the chain. He recognizes the form of the practice. He manages to track her down, not to meet her, just to send a short letter. All it says is, I recognize you.
That gives me chills. I recognize you.
And then another stranger, E, finds a notebook she left behind. And he writes to her and just asks, how do I begin?
What does she say?
She tells him, you've already begun. The asking is the beginning. The thirst is the start.
So let's zoom out and define this chain. The source says its members are connected by form, not by contact.
Right. Think about the sequence of events. The administrator in 1847 leaves a note. Ines finds it. Eli researches it. Marta leaves a glass. D finds the glass. They are links, but they don't have to know each other or even like each other.
They're just like those singers in the choir.
Exactly. They are sustaining a frequency. And the source talks about this philosophy of residue. Remember the heavier water?
When the minerals in the pipe, yeah.
The argument is that consciousness works the same way. When you really attend to something, you leave a residue on it, and it leaves a residue on you.
So Ines is literally heavier because of all the things she's witnessed in the archive.
Yes. There's a line where she thinks the seeing accumulates. By watching the crack in the wall, she adds to the reality of the wall. By watching the water, the administrator made it real in a way the engineer's tools couldn't.
That's a beautiful, if maybe a little terrifying idea, that we're weighed down by our own attention. So where does it all end up? Does Yanni save the archive? Does Marta finally get a drink of water?
Well, if you're looking for a neat and tidy Hollywood ending, you won't find it here. Venus. She gets pushed out.
Pushed out of her job.
Digitization. The city decides to scan the entire archive.
We can't scan a gap.
You can't scan a gap.
Yeah.
You can scan the birth certificate, but you can't scan the silence of the crossed out name. You can't capture the texture of the paper, the weight of the file. The digital version has information, but it has no interval. It has no depth.
So her shadow archive is just gone.
Erased. She retires. But she leaves one last note behind for whoever comes after. And She keeps that 1847 page with her, sitting with it until her last day. She has a dream near the end where she's at a fountain and a shadow tells her, each watcher adds to the water.
Wow. She became part of the flow she was studying. And what about Marta?
Marta just keeps moving. She becomes a wanderer, going from city to city as buildings fall, always carrying her internal tropics with her. But she has this one pivotal moment where she takes her statue of the faceless goddess and breaks it.
She breaks it, but I thought she worshipped it.
She did. But she realizes the whole perfect statue was a kind of lie. By shattering it, she creates dozens of fragments. She creates more edges, more gaps, more brokenness. The ruin is more honest than the pristine object.
So the destruction is the point.
The destruction is what creates the interval. You can't have a gap unless something is broken apart.
This is a lot to take in. We've gone from hovering hands to salt water to broken statues, so why does this matter? Why should you, listening to this on your commute, care about the interval?
Because we live in a world that is completely obsessed with closing that gap. We want the instant gratification. We click buy, we want it tomorrow. We send the text, we want the reply now. We want to measure the water, get the data, and move on.
We're all Heinrich Voss, the engineer. If we can't measure it, it's not real.
Exactly. We are terrified of that empty space. But these texts, these characters, Ines, Marta, the administrator, they're inviting us to just sit in that space for a minute, to be okay with the wanting, to be okay with the silence.
It's an invitation to join the chain.
I think so. The source sort of implies that by hearing this, by attending to these stories, you are now attending to their residue. You've noticed the gap.
That is a pretty haunting thought.
It is, but it's also freeing in a way. I mean, you don't have to fix everything. You can just note it.
So here's a challenge for you. Sometime today, when you reach for that cup of coffee, or when you're about to open a door, just hesitate for 1 second.
Live in the interval.
Watch the space between your hand and the world. Don't rush to close it. Just see what happens when you let the wanting exist all on its own.
And remember the administrator's words. You don't have to solve it.
I will note this and move on. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.